Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, where real stories meet raw emotions. Tonight's confession is complicated. It's the kind of story that lives in the gray area between impulse and consequence, where one decision on an ordinary business trip changes everything. So if you enjoy honest, unfiltered confessions and stories that make you pause and think, you're in the right place. Get comfortable. Take a deep breath. Because today's confession is titled, I cheated with my husband on a recent business trip. I'm sitting across from the man I've been married to for 7 years, watching him cut a piece of steak, and all I can think about is the way the hotel carpet in Chicago felt against my back 3 nights ago. It's a weird thing, how quickly your life can split into 2 different versions. There's the version where I'm a dedicated wife who just got back from a grueling 4-day leadership conference. Then there's the version that exists only in the dark, behind a locked hotel door, with a man who isn't my husband. My husband looks up, smiles, and asks me if the wine is okay. He's so decent. He's so predictable. And in that moment, I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the underside of the table just to stay upright. I'm not a bad person. Or at least I never thought I was. I'm the person people call when they need a favor. I'm the one who remembers birthdays. But 3 nights ago, I chose to be someone else. And the terrifying part isn't just that I did it, it's that I'm not sure I regret it as much as I should. To understand how I got here, you have to understand the silence that had been growing in our house for the last 2 years. It wasn't a loud, fighting kind of silence. It was the kind that settles in like dust. You don't notice it until you realize you can't breathe anymore. We were fine. We were safe. But I felt like I was disappearing. Then came the business trip. It was supposed to be standard. 4 days of workshops, networking, and overpriced hotel salads. I was looking forward to the sleep, honestly. But on the second night, at the hotel bar, I met him. He wasn't even part of my conference. He was there for some tech startup thing, looking just as bored and out of place as I felt. We started talking about how much we hated the corporate speak of these events, and before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. He looked at me, really looked at me, in a way I hadn't been looked at in years. It wasn't just lust. It was curiosity. He wanted to know what I thought, what I dreamed about, what I was afraid of. I told myself it was just a conversation. I told myself I was just being friendly. But there's a specific vibration in the air when you're about to do something you can't take back. You can feel it in your chest, a sort of warning light that you choose to ignore. The night escalated slowly, then all at once. A second drink. A shared appetizer. A walk to the elevators. I remember standing there, watching the floor numbers climb, knowing that if I got off on my floor alone, my life stayed the same. But if I didn't get off at my floor. The next 48 hours were a blur of adrenaline and guilt that felt a lot like being alive again. We didn't talk about our real lives. We didn't exchange last names. It was a vacuum. A beautiful, destructive vacuum. He made me feel like I was 22 again, like the world was wide open and I wasn't just a wife or an employee. I was a woman. But then the trip ended. The bubble popped. I took the flight back home, scrubbed the scent of him off my skin in the airport bathroom, and put my wedding ring back on. Now, back at the dinner table, I'm trying to play the part. My husband is telling me about a leak in the guest bathroom, and how he thinks he can fix it himself this weekend. I'm nodding, saying the right things, but my phone is sitting face down on the table. It has been buzzing intermittently for the last 20 minutes. I know it's him. We agreed no contact. We agreed this was a one-time thing. But he's been texting me all afternoon, telling me he can't stop thinking about the way I looked in the morning light. Everything okay? My husband asks, gesturing toward my phone. You seem jumpy. Just work. I lie. The lie comes out so smoothly it scares me. They're still dealing with some fallout from the conference. He reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. You work too hard. I'm glad you're home. I feel like a ghost. I feel like if he looked closely enough, he'd see right through me to the hotel room, to the rumpled sheets, to the person I became when he wasn't looking. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, just to breathe. I locked the door, leaned against the sink, and finally flipped my phone over. There were 4 messages, but they weren't the ones I expected. The first was from the man from the trip. "I think I left my watch in your bag when we were packing up. Check the side pocket." The second was a photo of the watch. The third was a text from my husband, sent an hour ago, while I was in the shower. It just said, "Found something interesting in your suitcase while I was helping you unpack. We should talk after dinner." My heart stopped. I hadn't unpacked yet. My husband had helped me while I was cleaning up. I slowly walked back out to the dining room. My husband was no longer eating. He was sitting perfectly still, his hands folded on the table. The steak was cold. The wine was untouched. "I thought I'd save you the trouble of doing the laundry," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "But I found a few things that didn't seem to belong to you." He didn't look angry. He looked hollow, like he was seeing a stranger sitting in his wife's chair. "Is there something you want to tell me about Chicago?" he asked. But it wasn't the question that made my blood run cold. It was what was sitting on the table next to his plate. It wasn't a watch. It was a receipt. A receipt from the hotel bar, dated the second night of the trip. A receipt for 2 drinks, paid for with our joint credit card, a card I thought I'd kept in my wallet, but must have used in a moment of sheer, reckless stupidity. And at the bottom of the receipt, in messy, drunken handwriting that wasn't mine, someone had written a phone number and a note that changed everything. The silence in the dining room was heavy, the kind of heavy that makes your ears ring. I looked down at the receipt. It was crumpled, the thermal paper yellowed slightly at the edges from being shoved into a pocket. There, at the bottom, in black ink that looked like it had been written in a hurry, were the words, "Thanks for the company. Room 412 was better than I expected." My stomach didn't just drop, it evaporated. I could feel the blood draining from my face, leaving my skin cold and tight. I looked at my husband. He wasn't crying. He wasn't yelling. He was just watching me with a look of clinical detachment, like I was a bug he was studying under a microscope. "I can explain that," I said. The words sounded hollow, even to me. They were the words of a person who had already lost the argument before it started. "Can you?" he asked. He leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. "Because I did a little math. I looked at the timestamp on that receipt. It was 11:45 p.m. Then I looked at our phone records. You called me at 11:30 p.m. that night to tell me you were going to bed because you were exhausted from the keynote. You sounded tired. You even yawned." I remembered that call. I had been standing in the hotel hallway, leaning against the cold wallpaper, heart racing because he was waiting inside the room. I had performed that yawn. I had crafted that "Good night, honey," with the precision of an actress. "It was a client," I lied. The lie was a reflex now, a desperate animal trying to find a hole to crawl into. A group of us went to the bar. I paid for a round because I wanted to close the deal. Someone must have grabbed the receipt and written a joke on it. You know how those sales guys are. They're obnoxious. My husband didn't blink. "A client? In room 412? The same room number that was assigned to you." The room felt like it was shrinking. I hadn't even realized he knew my room number. I usually don't bother telling him because why would it matter? We trust each other. Or we did. I didn't stay in 412. I stammered, my brain firing in 1,000 directions at once, trying to find a path out. There was a plumbing issue. They moved me. I must have mentioned the old room number to someone. "Stop," he said. It wasn't loud, but it cut through my rambling like a blade. "Just stop. Every word you say right now is just making the person I thought I married disappear a little more. I didn't just find the receipt. I found the watch, too." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy, silver chronograph. It was the watch from the text message. The one the man from the trip said he'd left in my bag. I didn't even know it was there. I whispered, and for once, I was telling the partial truth. I hadn't checked the side pocket of my suitcase yet. I had been too busy trying to pretend everything was normal. It was tucked inside your spare pair of shoes, my husband said, his voice trembling for the first time. A man's watch. In your shoes. Hidden. If it was just a client, if it was just a joke, why was this in your luggage? I sat there, frozen. I could feel the weight of my own choices crushing me. I looked at the man I had built a life with, the man who knew my coffee order and my fear of spiders and the way I look when I first wake up, and I realized I had become a stranger to him in the span of 72 hours. But then, a flicker of something else hit me. A spark of survival. Or maybe it was just the darkness I'd discovered in Chicago finally taking over. Why were you going through my bag? I asked, my voice gaining a sharp, defensive edge. You said you were helping me unpack, but you've never helped me unpack in 7 years. You were looking for something. You were spying on me. It was a classic move. Deflect. Turn the guilt back on the accuser. It was morally bankrupt, and I knew it, but I was drowning and I needed a handhold. I was looking for the gift, he said, his eyes darkening. Today is the anniversary of our first date. I thought you might have picked something up for me at the airport, or maybe tucked a card in there. I wanted to surprise you with the dinner I made. I wanted to be the husband you deserved. The guilt hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I had forgotten. I had been so wrapped up in the adrenaline of the affair, in the secret texts, and the memory of someone else's hands, that the anniversary of the day we started our life together hadn't even crossed my mind. I'm sorry, I choked out. Sorry for forgetting the date? Or sorry you got caught? He stood up, picking up the receipt and the watch. I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight. I can't be in this house with you. I look at you and I don't see my wife. I see a performance. He walked toward the door, but he stopped at the hallway mirror. He looked at himself, then at me. By the way, he said, I called the number on the receipt before you got home. My heart hammered against my ribs. And? A man answered. My husband said, a strange, twisted smile touching his lips. He sounded surprised. But when I told him who I was, he didn't hang up. He told me everything. He told me you were the one who approached him. He told me you were the one who suggested the room. He said he felt bad for me. He said you seemed practiced at this. The air left my lungs. That was a lie. I knew it was a lie. He had approached me. He had been the one pushing the boundaries. But I couldn't say that without admitting to everything. My husband was playing me, using the man from the trip to break me down. He's lying, I said, my voice cracking. Maybe, my husband replied. But he has no reason to lie to me. You, on the other hand? You have every reason in the world. He walked out. The front door clicked shut, and the silence returned, even heavier than before. I stood there for a long time, staring at the half-eaten steak on the table. I felt a mixture of terror and, weirdly, a sense of relief. The secret was out. The acting was over. But as the adrenaline started to fade, a new thought began to itch at the back of my mind. I picked up my phone. I went to the messages from the man in Chicago. I looked at the text about the watch. I think I left my watch in your bag when we were packing up. Check the side pocket. I reread it 3 times. Then I went to my suitcase, which was still sitting open on the bedroom floor. I looked at the side pocket. It was small, barely big enough for a passport. I looked at the shoes my husband said the watch was hidden in. Then I looked at the time the text was sent. The text was sent at 5:15 p.m. My husband had sent me a text at 5:30 p.m. saying he was starting dinner. If my husband had found the watch while I was in the shower, which was around 6:30 p.m., then why did the man from Chicago text me about it before my husband could have possibly found it? And how did he know exactly which pocket it was in, unless someone had told him to put it there? I went back to the dining room and picked up the receipt my husband had left on the table. I looked at the handwriting again. The 4 in 412 had a very specific crossbar. It was a stylistic choice, almost like a European-style fork. I walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up the grocery list my husband had written that morning. I scanned down the list: milk, eggs, bread, wine. There, at the bottom, was the number 4 for the 4-pack of sparkling water he bought. The crossbar was identical. The handwriting on the receipt wasn't the man's from Chicago. It was my husband's. My breath hitched. My husband hadn't found a receipt with a note on it. He had written the note himself. He had planted the evidence. But that meant he already knew. He had known before I even walked through the door. And if he knew, and he was planting evidence to make it look worse, to make it look like I was practiced at this, then where was he actually going tonight? I looked at my phone again. A new message had appeared from an unknown number. No text, just a link to a private cloud storage folder. I clicked it. The folder contained a single video file. I pressed play, and my heart stopped. It was a video of the hotel hallway in Chicago. It showed me walking toward room 412. But I wasn't alone. I was talking to the man. And as we reached the door, he turned toward the camera, a camera that shouldn't have been there, and he winked. He didn't wink at me. He winked at the lens. Then, he looked directly into the camera and whispered something that the microphone barely caught, but I heard it loud and clear. "He's going to love this." I stood in my kitchen, the blue light of my phone screen washing over my face, and I felt like the floor was tilting. I played the video again. And again. "He's going to love this." The man I'd spent 2 nights with, the man I thought had seen the real me, wasn't a stranger I'd met by chance at a hotel bar. He was an actor. Or a friend. Or a weapon. But whatever he was working for my husband. I sat down on the floor, my back against the refrigerator, and let the phone drop into my lap. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had gone to Chicago to escape the feeling of being watched, of being managed, by a husband who always seemed to know what was best for me. And in trying to escape, I had walked directly into a cage he had built specifically for me. But why? Why go through all of this? If he wanted a divorce, he could have just asked. If he suspected me of being unhappy, we could have talked. But this wasn't about a divorce. This was about leverage. This was about breaking me so completely that I would never be able to stand on my own 2 feet again. I started thinking back to the last few months. Every time I mentioned the Chicago trip, my husband had encouraged it. He told me I looked stressed. He told me I needed to let my hair down. He'd even suggested the hotel. "I stayed there for a convention years ago," he'd said. "The bar is great. You'll love the atmosphere." He hadn't just known I was going. He had scouted the location. He had probably handpicked the guy. I felt a surge of anger that burned hotter than the guilt. Yes, I had cheated. I had made the choice to walk into that room. I wasn't an innocent victim in this. But the level of calculation it took to orchestrate my downfall was something else entirely. It was sociopathic. I spent the next 3 hours scouring our shared computer. I'm not a tech genius, but when you've been with someone for 7 years, you know their passwords. You know their habits. I looked through the deleted emails. I looked through the credit card statements that weren't the joint one. And then I found it. An account under a name I didn't recognize, but linked to our home IP address. It was a PayPal account. There were 3 payments made over the last month. Each one was for $2,000. The recipient was a handle that looked like a burner account. But the most damning thing wasn't the money. It was the notes section on the final payment, sent the morning I flew back from Chicago. Bonus for the video. Make sure the watch is in the side pocket. I'll take it from here. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My husband didn't just want to catch me. He wanted to document it. He wanted a record of my betrayal that he could hold over my head forever. I thought about our life. We didn't have kids, but we had a house. We had retirement accounts. We had a reputation in our small, upscale community. If this video got out, I'd lose everything. My job, my friends, my standing. I'd be the woman who got caught on camera with a stranger while her loving husband was at home cooking her an anniversary dinner. He was setting the stage for a perfect, lopsided divorce where I walked away with nothing but my shame. I heard a car pull into the driveway. I thought he said he was going to a hotel. My heart started to race. I closed the laptop, shoved it under the sofa, and stood up just as the front door opened. My husband walked in. He looked tired, but he didn't look like a man who had been crying in a hotel room. He looked like a man who had just finished a long day at the office. Satisfied. "I thought you were leaving," I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. "I couldn't do it," he said, walking into the kitchen and pouring himself a glass of water. "I realize that despite everything, I still care about you. I want to work through this." I watched him drink. He looked so sincere. If I hadn't seen that video, if I hadn't found those payments, I would have fallen to my knees and begged for his forgiveness. I would have spent the rest of my life trying to make it up to him, being the perfect, subservient wife out of pure, unadulterated gratitude for his mercy. And that was exactly the point. He didn't want a divorce. He wanted a prisoner. "You want to work through it?" I asked. "I do," he said, stepping closer. He reached out to touch my face, and I had to fight every instinct I had to keep from recoiling. "But we have to be honest with each other now. No more secrets. I need to know everything that happened in that room." "Why?" I asked. "So you can watch the video again?" The silence that followed was different from the others. This one was sharp. It was the sound of a mask slipping. His hand dropped from my face. His eyes, which had been so full of decency just moments ago, turned cold and flat. The good guy persona evaporated, leaving behind someone I realized I didn't know at all. "What did you say?" he asked. "I saw the link," I said. "I saw the payments. I saw the handwriting on the receipt, honey. You're a lot of things, but you're not a very good forger." He didn't look panicked. He didn't deny it. He just pulled out a chair and sat down at the table, right where he had been sitting during dinner. "I suppose it was only a matter of time before you poked around," he said. He sounded almost bored. "But it doesn't really change the math, does it? You still did it. You still went to that room. You still lied to my face while you were doing it. You set me up." I spat. "You paid a man to seduce your wife." "I provided an opportunity," he corrected. "A test. If you were happy, if you were the person you pretended to be, you would have said no. You would have had one drink and gone upstairs to call your husband. But you didn't. You were looking for an exit, and I just gave you a map." "You're sick," I said. "Maybe," he shrugged. "But I'm the one with the video. And I'm the one with the lawyers. If we go to court, I'll make sure everyone sees exactly what kind of woman you are. Or," he paused, letting the word hang in the air. "Or what?" "Or we go back to the way things were," he said. "Only better. You'll quit that job, the one that keeps you away from home so much. You'll stay here. We'll work on this marriage. And as long as you're the wife I need you to be, that video stays in the cloud. Think of it as an insurance policy for our future happiness." He was offering me a life sentence. He wanted me to live in a gilded cage, knowing that at any moment, he could press a button and destroy me. He wanted total control. I looked at him, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel love, or fear, or even guilt. I felt a cold, hard clarity. He thought he had won because he had played a better game. He thought I was the weak link. But he forgot one thing. I was the one who went to Chicago. I was the one who was capable of leading a double life. I was the one who could look him in the eye and lie without blinking. He had taught me how to be a monster, and then he was surprised when I started to grow teeth. "I need some time to think," I said. "Of course," he said, standing up. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. It felt like the mark of a brand. "Take all the time you need. But remember, I'm always watching. He went upstairs, whistling a tune I didn't recognize. I stayed in the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. Instead, I picked up my phone. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call my mother. I called the number from the receipt. The number of the man from Chicago. It rang 3 times before he answered. I told you not to call this number, he said, his voice low and annoyed. My husband didn't pay you the final installment, did he? I asked. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. What are you talking about? The $2,000, I said, leaning against the counter. The bonus for the video. I'm looking at his account right now. The payment was flagged. It's sitting in pending because of a security dispute. He's planning on canceling it as soon as he gets what he wants from me. It was a total lie. The payment was fine. But I knew men like this. Men who did dirty work for hire were always looking for the double cross. That son of a... The man began, his voice tightening. I can give you $5,000, I said. Right now. Cash. And I can give you something else. Something my husband doesn't know I have. I'm listening, the man said. I looked up at the ceiling, toward the bedroom where my husband was probably sleeping the sleep of the self-righteous. He thinks he's the only one who likes to record things, I whispered. But he's been talking in his sleep for years. And you wouldn't believe the things he's confessed to while he thought I was dreaming. It was the biggest gamble of my life. I had nothing on my husband. No recordings, no secrets, nothing but my own desperation. But I knew the man on the phone was greedy, and I knew my husband was arrogant. And I was about to play them both against each other. Tell me what you want, the man said. I want the original file, I said. And I want you to send me the footage from the other camera. The one you pointed at him when you were planning this. The silence on the line was deafening. How did you know about the other camera? He asked. I didn't. It was a total shot in the dark. But in a game of mirrors, you have to assume everyone is looking at their own reflection. Because I would have done the same thing, I said. Now, do we have a deal? The next 48 hours were the quietest of my life. My husband was back to being the perfect partner, making coffee in the morning, asking how I slept, even suggesting we look at vacation rentals for the summer. It was sickening. Every time he smiled, I saw the video file behind his eyes. Every time he touched my shoulder, I felt the invisible leash he was trying to tighten. I played my part perfectly. I was the submissive, reformed wife. I apologized again. I stayed home from work, claiming a migraine. I let him see me looking at How to Rebuild Trust articles on my tablet. I wanted him to feel secure. I wanted him to believe his plan had worked flawlessly. Arrogance is a funny thing. It makes even the smartest people blind to the shadows moving right in front of them. On Thursday afternoon, while he was at the office, I met the man from Chicago. We didn't meet in a dark alley or a hotel bar. We met in a crowded Starbucks inside a Target. It was the most mundane place on earth, which made it the perfect spot for a cold-blooded exchange. He looked different without the expensive suit and the hotel lighting. He looked tired, a little desperate. He was just a guy with a nice face and no conscience, making a living off the wreckage of other people's lives. You got the money? He asked, not looking at me. He was staring at a display of overpriced water bottles. I handed him a heavy envelope. $5,000. It was nearly everything I had in my personal savings account, the one my husband didn't monitor because he thought it was just fun money from my birthday gifts over the years. He didn't count it. He just tucked it into his jacket. You were right, he whispered. I don't like being played. Your husband told me this was a one and done. He told me he wouldn't use the footage for anything but personal closure. Then I see he's trying to trap you with it. The footage? I prompted. He slid a thumb drive across the table. Everything is on there. The original file from the hotel room. The raw footage. And the other thing you asked for? I gripped the drive so hard the plastic edges bit into my palm. Does he know? No, the man said, finally looking at me. There was a flicker of respect in his eyes, or maybe it was just fear. He's too busy being the hero of his own story to realize he was being recorded the whole time, too. I always keep a backup. People like him, they eventually turn on the help. I've learned to protect myself. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out. I went straight to a public library, sat in the back corner, and plugged the drive into a rental computer. I went through the files. The video of me in Chicago was there, in high definition. It was painful to watch, seeing myself so desperate for a connection that I couldn't see the trap. But I didn't delete it yet. Then I opened the second folder. The one the man had recorded without my husband's knowledge. It was a recording of a Zoom call from 3 weeks ago. My husband was sitting in his home office, the room right above where I was currently standing. He was talking to the man from Chicago. I want her to feel like she has no choice. My husband's voice came through the headphones, cold and precise. She's getting too independent. She's talking about that promotion in Seattle. If she takes it, she's gone. I need her broken. I want her to crawl back to me, thinking I'm the only person in the world who could ever love a cheetah like her. Do whatever you have to do. Get her in that room. I'll handle the rest. I sat there for a long time, the words looping in my brain. I need her broken. He didn't love me. He didn't even want me. He wanted to own me. The affair wasn't the tragedy of our marriage. It was just the tool he used to finish it off. I felt a strange, cold peace wash over me. I wasn't the bad wife anymore. I wasn't the victim either. I was something else entirely. I went home. I cooked dinner. I'd opened a bottle of the expensive wine we'd been saving. When my husband walked through the door, he looked pleased. He saw the candles, the wine, and the way I was dressed. He thought the reconditioning was already taking hold. This is nice, he said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. See? I told you we could get back to this. You were right, I said, turning in his arms. I smiled at him, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes for the first time in years. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About honesty. About no more secrets. I'm glad, honey, he said, reaching for a glass of wine. I have a gift for you, I said. For our anniversary. I know it's a few days late. I handed him a small, wrapped box. He opened it, looking confused. Inside was the thumb drive. What's this? It's a movie, I said, leaning back against the counter. A documentary, actually. About a man who was so afraid of losing his wife that he decided to destroy her instead. It has a really interesting twist at the end. His face went pale. The good guy mask didn't just slip this time, it shattered. He looked at the drive, then at me, then back at the drive. Where did you get this? He hissed. It doesn't matter, I said. What matters is what I did with it before I came home. I took a slow sip of my wine. It tasted like iron and victory. I sent a copy to your HR department. I lied. I hadn't sent it yet, but he didn't know that. And to your mother. And to our lawyer. Along with a very detailed explanation of the test you put me through. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice was shaking. You'd never do that. You'd be exposing yourself, too. You'd be the woman who cheated on camera. That's the thing you don't understand, I said, stepping closer to him until our chests were almost touching. I don't care anymore. I'd rather be known as a cheater than spend one more second being your puppet. I can live with my mistakes. But can you live with yours? Can you live with everyone knowing that you paid $5,000 to have your wife seduced because you were too weak to just be a better husband? He looked like he wanted to hit me. He looked like he wanted to cry. But mostly, he just looked small. What do you want? He whispered. I want the house, I said. I want the savings. I want a quiet, uncontested divorce where you admit to irreconcilable differences. And I want you to move out tonight. And if I don't, then I hit send on the emails that are currently sitting in my drafts, I said. And we can both go down together. I have nothing left to lose, but you? You still care what people think of you. You still want to be the good guy. So, what's it going to be? He stared at me for a long minute. I saw the gears turning, the realization sinking in that he had lost the game he'd spent months designing. He had tried to break me, but all he'd done was strip away everything that made me hesitate. He didn't say a word. He just turned, walked upstairs, and I heard the sound of a suitcase being dragged across the floor. 20 minutes later, the front door closed. The house was quiet. I sat down at the dining room table, the same place where this all started. I looked at the 2 glasses of wine. I picked up his glass and poured it down the sink. I'm still not a good person. I know that. I cheated. I lied. I manipulated. I played a game of chicken with my own reputation just to win a war I shouldn't have been fighting in the first place. But as I sat there in the silence of my own home, for the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel like I was disappearing. I picked up my phone. There was a notification from a real estate app. New listing, 1-bedroom apartment in Seattle. Harbor views. I clicked apply. And then, I deleted the video. Not because I was afraid of it anymore, but because I didn't need to look at it to remember who I was. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was just empty. And for now, empty was exactly what I needed. And now, here's the question that lingers after everything you just heard. Who is the villain here, really? Is it the wife who crossed the line? The husband who never noticed the silence growing? Or the slow, quiet distance that pulled them apart in the first place? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop your opinion in the comments, and let's talk about it. If this story pulled you in, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves deep confessions, and subscribe to the channel for more real stories that live in the gray. I'll see you in the next confession.